everybody. Welcome back to the next episode of our new podcast, Coffee Breakdown. We're here to basically shed light on the human and creative aspects of science. And we want to just remind everyone again that this is really a learning process for not just you, the listeners, but also us here speaking. So we remind you to keep that in mind. And with that, I would like to introduce today's guests. First is Ray Chandra, who is currently working in Aalto University up in Finland, who is a fusion researcher as well. And we have back on here today, Michele Marin, who is currently working at the Swiss Plasma Center in Lausanne, Switzerland. And of course, there's me here. And so all of us are fusion scientists, and today we wanted to try something a bit new. So we're going to bring up some, examples of fusion reactors in pop culture, mostly movies. And we're going to make a little commentary on it and try to judge it based on how realistic it is according to our experience in the fusion science side of things. So with that, I think welcome Ray and Michele to the podcast.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having us. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, I hope so. It should be interesting. So we've prepared a small list of different examples in popular media, and I guess we're just going to go through them one by one. I think what we're going to do is we're each going to just go around in circles. First, we introduce one of them, what we know about it, and then we just start discussing. And then at some point when that's over, we just move to the next one and the next one and the next one. We'll see how far we go. And if there's some extra time at the end, we'll just start, general talking about different examples of fusion reactors that didn't make the list, let's say. All right. So with that, Ray, you have the floor with the first one.
Yes. So you said mostly movies, but I think everything is movies.
Yeah.
Right now,
Fair enough.
right now we have only movies. But also just to make this interesting, we're gonna also rate a lot of our judgment on whether the movies appropriately describe the fusion reactors or whether it's quite realistic in terms of an actual fusion reactor, let's say. And of course, the very first popular one is Star Trek, because Star Trek is really about a utopian future where fusion is probably working there instead of our harsh reality that fusion is probably 20 or 30 years away.
I think most of them have fusion working, or examples at least.
But if we jump ahead to the 24th century, then fusion is definitely there. And this is also evident in Star Trek, particularly Star Trek The New Generation, which I think is the best one so far. So fusion in Star Trek is used as a kind of a subsystem. So if any Star Trek fans fan watching, you probably know that the main powering the starship is a warp core, which is powered by antimatter. So fusion is not really the main power system, but it is used for impulse drives. And that is essentially how the ship moves when it's not in warp, in normal space. And the thing is that as far as I'm aware, in the movies, it's not mentioned very well. So I need to dig a little bit deeper. And apparently there is a fan product, I suppose, that's called the Next Generation Technical Manual, where inside is like a very detailed description of all the science things in the movie, which is probably completely helpful in our discussion today. But as I read it, it's also completely gibberish, and it's almost as fiction as the movies itself. However,
so are we including that fan manual in our discussion or no?
Yes, I think, but just by the fact that there is a technical manual, I think we could safely say that whoever made the movie make enough effort in terms of the science department to make it somewhat relatable in the near future. Or maybe we can also think of it as like some kind of a hope from the creators that this thing will happen in
So
the
we'll
21st century.
we'll assume it's canon.
We assume it's
assume it's
canon.
canon.
Exactly. This
We
is
assume
okay.
this
We
is
can assume
canon.
it's canon.
Okay, but we're judging it from our current understanding of fusions, right? And the idea is that the reaction core uses proton-proton fusion. Now,
Ooh.
that is essentially what is happening in the sun, right? So basically, you just fuse two hydrogen ion together, not the isotopes that we normally use, which is deuterium and tritium. But as you know, probably the cross section for this is very low, and it actually doesn't happen in the sun because the sun waits for the proton to become deuterium with in millions of years. So I don't know exactly how they make this work. It doesn't say anything in the technical manual. So keep that
I
in
guess
mind.
they go through the full cycle of fuel from hydrogen to deuterium.
Maybe, but this
Well,
is a spaceship, and if a spaceship,
There is a,
if you need to wait a million years for your spaceship to travel, I think that's quite a long time, to be honest.
I read, but maybe it's not specifically the TNG, the next generation. It might, because I've read that they use deuterium, but like deuterium only. So it's not like DT, but like DD.
okay,
Right,
DD
right,
is
right, right.
doable. DD is doable.
That's more manageable, I think.
If it
But
were
it could be,
that,
it could
then
be.
it would be. Yeah, if it
But it
were
could be.
that, then I can see that, okay, you know, deuterium, you can still collect it relatively easily from natural sources of hydrogen, right? Because it's a naturally occurring isotope. So if you have like some sort of refinement facility, fuel is not that hard. It'd be
Right.
easier than the proton-proton reaction, right?
Definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Although, because this is only speaking with the next generation, and as you know, there's a lot of Star Trek series, so probably it evolved over time, or as you said, maybe they change it somehow down the line. But I think the fact is that they indeed use fusion in somewhat of a correct way, which is two hydrogen atoms or two hydrogen elements or light elements. So that is already a check mark that's pretty good. But there's also a small detail that I think is very interesting, is that they in the technical manual, it says that they replace the core, the whole reactor core, every 10,000 hours of flight, or if 0.01 millimeter of material is eroded from the inside surface. And I think that's a very cool idea, because we do have this problem in an actual fusion reactor in the tokamak, where we might need to replace either diverter materials or the beryllium first wall, but of course not every 10,000 hours. I think 10,000 hours is like 10 years, around 10 years.
Yeah, continuous flight, right? Like 10,000 hours.
But keep in mind, this is replacing the whole. So basically, you're building a new reactor, which in the economical scale of a fusion reactor is probably not going to happen.
I find it interesting.
Diverter every 10 years.
Yeah, but just if it's just a diverter, then yes. But it's an interesting point that they take this into account.
No, but I think it's interesting that they also say, or after 0.1 millimeters of the wall is eroded.
Yes.
Like, I think that would happen in a lot less time than 10,000 hours.
Yes. In the normal fusion, I think it's probably going to happen really fast. But when I read that, I think that, oh, okay, this is the 34th century, where they basically solve world hunger and world peace and whatever. So they probably have abundance of materials to make this happen.
You want to keep your reactor new and shiny, you know. You have the money for it.
We also have to qualify whether we're trying to judge it on modern technology or what we think they would have at that time, right? Like, but like right now, I would not see that being like 0.1 millimeters. It would probably be like closer to like what 1,000 hours than 10,000. I don't know. It's your expertise, Ray, the wall surface.
Okay. So based on that, I'm gonna judge that fusion reactor in Star Trek probably could happen, considering that it happened in the 24th century. Sure, at least it uses a possible fusion reaction, and the fact that they consider replacing the materials gave them bonus points. So I'll give them a 6 out of 10
Okay.
of fusion
Okay.
appropriateness.
So Michele, do you have something to add to that? Some points that you found that Ray didn't say?
No, for Star Trek, no, I don't have much more.
Okay.
Star Trek, this seems fine.
Do you
It's
agree?
fairly difficult to find stuff on the Star Trek Fusion Engine, even though, as Ray said, the fandom itself, like the amount of technical accuracy in Star Trek universe is pretty insane. There are wiki pages about it.
Yeah, in the movie itself is hardly mentioned.
Yeah.
Fusion.
Yeah, there is a very deep lore in Star Trek, and of course, some of it conflicts with itself in some ways. But I mean, it's very wide. So I think I didn't limit myself to TNG. I just went Star Trek as a whole,
Okay.
and there was like a bit of extra information that it seems to combine concepts of like magnetic confinement and inertial confinement, because it says that the fuel is ignited, well, they specifically say ignited in a carbon chamber. So they were probably using the old in the first iterations, like the old carbon wall tokamak designs. So they kind of knew that at least, but they said it was ignited in a carbon chamber using laser initiators. So then they were like using lasers to spark the reaction, but then it's not, doesn't explicitly say it's pulsed. So like, are the laser initiators like a spark plug that just sort of like started up? I have no idea. But
just
it
break
does,
down.
they did do a little bit more research into it, it seems, for other things that are not the TNG. But
I think regardless of the type, you still need to have some kind of materials to house the reaction. And it's going to be hot, of course.
Yeah.
Even without any magnetic confinement. And carbon is a good choice.
Carbon, yeah. Well, at least I think they did the research into that. Carbon has been traditionally what we used in the field too. Of course, now we're moving to metal wall like tungsten and beryllium because of reasons of, what is it, fuel
The tritium
retention. Yeah,
yes.
fuel retention, where it kind of absorbs the hydrogen from the fuel, and
That's
then
correct.
we can't use it anymore. But at least probably at the day when they were researching how to design this thing for their lore, carbon wall was the probably the top material of choice.
That is likely.
To be fair, fusion retention relates to safety because we're using tritium, but also because tritium is expensive, so we don't want it to be lasted in the vessel or trapped in the vessel. But if you don't have that problem, then carbon is perfect.
Well, yeah, if they have abundant amount of tritium, right? Because let's say that in the future you can just get it from anywhere.
Or if they don't use tritium, right? If they use deuterium.
Oh, that's true too. That's true too.
If they use deuterium, they won't care about that at all.
That is a good point.
That makes sense then. Carbon wins against the...
Also, safety in the movie universe, safety is always not considered, at least.
Well, looking at what they do, yeah, the safety from
because
that
it is the plot point.
Yeah, it is always the plot point. Core meltdown. Always. Always. I don't know.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah, we'll come back to this. Exactly.
Before that, Michele, do you agree with my assessment of 6 out of 10?
I mean,
that's fusion appropriate.
From all of these carbon shenanigans are not it, I would even give it a 7. Or I don't know. Are we giving?
Okay.
Are we giving half points?
Okay.
Can we give you a 6.5?
No, I don't think we're gonna allow half points. I'm not anyway.
Well, the host has spoken.
Yeah.
Half points not allowed.
No half points. We're gonna commit to whole numbers. Integers only.
0.3 is okay. A quarter of a pie, maybe.
Integers only. Integers only.
Integers only.
So Michele, are you going with a 6 or a 7?
Let's see what did I had for this. I had a 6 as well, actually.
had a
in
6
my
as
own
well.
evaluation.
Okay,
So let's
okay.
go with the 6. Let's go with the
Okay.
6.
And I also put it as a 6 in my list when I was looking it up.
Unanimous.
I think it's
Interesting.
unanimous. This one's sitting at a 6.
Interesting.
It's like they've done enough research to know like how it could be, but of course, yeah, they wouldn't
It
know
is-
all the details unless you're like really a scientist in the field.
But
right?
it is still quite far-fetched. That's why it's
It is still quite far.
a
Yeah.
6 out of a 7 or 8.
Well, they didn't specify even exactly how they're putting the components together.
Yes, that is
right?
also true.
So it leaves a lot to the imagination, which is maybe the point. But for us, we want to see more details, I guess.
Yes, the details.
We need to be a bit charitable in terms of the details, I suppose, because the reality is that movies probably didn't care enough
Yeah.
to add all of these details.
I think this is a nice segue for the second movie, which for which the representation of fusion is really good, but it gives really few details. So the movie is X-Men, and in particular is X-Men Days of a Future Past. At the beginning of the movie, just after the first section, there's one shot, like a very short video, a few pictures of a tokamak system. And the depiction, we were not sure, we actually discussed this, we were not sure if this is real footage from a tokamak or if it's rendering. But it's very accurate. Like you could, if you had a tokamak, that's pretty much how it would look like. So the fusion reactor is used to power the plane that they have. How is it called? Right?
X-Jet.
The X-Jet. Yes.
Also
exactly.
the Blackbird. Yeah.
The Blackbird.
Yeah.
So they have a fusion reactor for the Blackbird. And okay, so that's really how it would look like. Is a little bit smaller of what we would expect a tokamak to look like. But I guess, I mean, we are researching on a more compact fusion system, so that's still half in my scale of accuracy. There are not too many details, and is not mentioned much anywhere else. So we give a pretty high grade for the accuracy, but for the depiction, that lowered my grade a little bit. So it's a 8 and maybe a 5. I still think averages out to 7. I would still
Averages
give it
out
a
to a
7.
7. Okay.
So let's talk about it a little bit on the feasibility point of view, because one of the main objections would be, okay, it's on a plane.
Yes.
But it can like the plane will accelerate, the tokamak will move, but the plasma dynamics happens on a much faster time scale, so it shouldn't affect the controls too much. So I think it wouldn't be a problem to put it on a plane. The problem is just that it is a little bit small, like it's compact. But if you have, I don't know, maybe very high field superconductors, that's not completely impossible.
See,
so that's
like,
why my grade is pretty high.
See, I gave it a much lower grade than you, precisely because it's on a plane. Like, I can understand the plane won't affect the plasma, but I'm really worried that the plasma affects the plane. Because we saw, like, if there's a disruption, like a jet, the disruption moved the entire, it's a multi-ton machine. It jumped. So
Yes,
like if you have that in the air and something happened to the plasma, it would like just throw your plane into the ground. Like,
but fusion power plant is expected to work without disruptions.
That's true. That's true. But I still think the magnetic forces are going to be difficult to work.
If you have a distraction, you're fucked. Yeah. You're gonna be in a bad place.
Like,
but if you don't have disruption, that should be fine.
That's fair. But like, I mean, engine failure are things you should account for, right? So, I mean, you could even have backup systems to give power in case it goes down. But like, I just think it's just a lot of magnetic energy, and like a plane is mostly metal. So
yes. Also, another thing, and we probably will go back to this later multiple times. at least for deuterium tritium fuel, which I guess is what they use in that one. But since there are no details, I'm just going to assume it's going to produce neutrons, and there doesn't seem to be a neutron shield.
That's also true.
So here's the thing, Michele. I don't think you care about ionizing radiation if you're already a mutant, aren't you?
Oh, that is a good point.
Especially not if
They
you're
don't care about
Wolverine, right?
neutrons.
Yeah.
Okay, but that aside, I think you guys have considerations that's way too detailed to me. I think it's just simply, I agree with you because it's on a plane. It's mainly the most of the gripe from me, because a tokamak will be essentially very heavy, and I would not think a plane would fly at all with a tokamak, especially in a conventional size. And in terms of that movie, I think the tokamak is more probably quite small, but still it's very heavy. And I don't think, and that's just the containment vessel, right? That's just the vacuum chamber. You still
Well,
have a lot of other systems that needs to be there. It's probably not considered by the movie itself.
well, most of the mass, I think, of a tokamak, like an existing tokamak, is also structural materials, things to actually prevent it from collapsing because of the magnetic stresses. So, I mean, if magnetic stress isn't the thing you want to worry about, I think you could cut down on the mass quite a bit, especially if you don't use a metal wall like we do currently. If you use the carbon wall, graphite's not that heavy, right? So,
Oh, that's true. Okay.
I mean, components can be made lighter if they didn't need to tolerate like high stresses. You could use aluminum, right? All
I guess
sorts of stuff.
if you
Yeah,
don't need the full fuel cycle, and you just put the fuel with deuterium and tritium at the beginning, you can cut off a lot of mass.
Yeah,
Huh.
right.
You could, I suppose you could also use like an ultra strong carbon fiber for the, like, I don't know, the structure.
You can use adamantium. Come on.
Yeah, at this point, right? Like,
Yeah, you're right. You have this
universe.
material in that universe. You have, and we don't know about the weight, I suppose.
That's true.
I think Wolverine is not that heavy, so maybe
Yeah.
it's pretty light.
Yeah, he's got to be strong enough to like move the entire
Yeah.
skeleton worth of metal, which would be really heavy if it were like a standard metal. I mean, he's
Yes.
really strong
Like-
also, but like, you know.
if you have a exoskeleton, a skeleton made out of tungsten, moving is gonna be hard.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think it could be that heavy, you know, that it would require a lot to move it if you have a lot of volume. But I don't know, right? It doesn't actually say. But I put it down at the 4 personally.
4 even,
A 4.
okay.
I just wasn't happy with the fact that it was like, I mean, we might be able to get it small enough to put on a jet, but I wouldn't put it on a jet. That's just ruined it for me.
Okay.
I could negotiate that down to a 6, but I don't think it should be lower.
Okay. Well, what does Ray have to say on
Ray,
this?
you're the judge.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I think personally, I will give it an 8, just because.
8? Okay.
Yes, just because it uses a correct like cinematography or like a correct frame of an actual tokamak, and I think that's very rare. I remembered when I watched this movie like in the theater, that when that scene comes up, it's like, hey, an actual tokamak. And I was kind of a movie fan, so a sci-fi movie fan, so I know a lot about movies that use fusion reactors. But this is one of the things that one of a movie that does it well and does it correct, I think. And I think that deserves an extra point.
Okay.
But again, it's on a plane, and it also,
like
explode in the end.
I have to admit, I didn't see that image. I forgot about that image when I was making this grading, but I still would keep it low, even if I knew that, because it's like they didn't really explain how that, like, they took the right sources maybe, but like the scientific
Yeah, there are no
part wasn't
details
there.
or science at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be
And
I'll,
wait.
I'll be charitable for this movie, and
Okay.
I'll give it a 7.
But I do.
But then downgraded because it's in a plane and it explodes in the end. So it's a 7.
That's also true. But I do have to say though, like when I was looking up this one, there was an interesting fact that like it's modeled after the Lockheed Martin XR-71, the stealth jet, right? Actually, the one in the movie, so, which is like an existing plane that this company is building, and it's very strange because so the movie came out 2014, I think. But in 2013, I think was when Lockheed Martin made the announcement that they were going to invest in like fusion to build their own fusion, whatever. Do you remember that?
Coincidences?
Yeah. So I
not.
think that's how it ended up in the movie in the first place.
That might
Because
be.
that was 2013 that this plane company decided that we're gonna build mini fusion reactors. So it could have been like an influence on the people who made the movie, since they were using the jet as a inspiration. They're like, oh, or maybe because they knew there was this fusion thing, that's how they got the inspiration in the first place. I don't know.
If this is how things went down, that would be really funny.
Like, yeah, if I knew a bit more backstory into it, I could be convinced to bump my grade higher, because that's just like a really cool story, right? But I don't know. I was just a weird tidbit that I found when I was looking it up.
Considering that the airtime of the fusion reactor is really small, it might have been just a coincidence. But also the fact that they added that may give weight to that story, you know?
Yeah, because like all the other X-jets in all the other movies never had a tokamak fusion reactor. They used something else, right? So like why specifically this movie had a tokamak fusion reactor in it, I don't know. And specifically a tokamak fusion reactor.
It is very sus.
Yeah. Either way, it was an interesting coincidence. It might just be coincidence, who knows? But okay, and I think we'll go from here into introduce the next reactor, which is from the movie Passengers. So this big spaceship carrying a lot of people to colonize a new planet somewhere out there in the expanse of the universe. So it's basically, the ship is called the Avalon, and it's powered by 8 fusion reactors, which are designed to run autonomously with some central like an artificial intelligence computing system looking over it, while all the passengers are put into cryosleep to survive the long journey. And so one things that it did say is that each of these fusion reactors have to produce constant power. So they're not pulsed machines, so that they're running all the time. And this kind of brings up this idea of the stellarators, though they don't actually explicitly state it anywhere that it is a stellarator. They have an image of the reactor core, the inside, and you see kind of like the donut design with like a central column and like a plasma going around it in this chamber. So it does look very much like a tokamak plasma, except for the fact that you can see the plasma visibly, which is a bit weird for me.
And the lines are kind of twisted.
The lines are kind of twisted.
Yeah.
So but I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure about that, right? Because so there was the image of the core when it was kind of stable, and there was like ripples on the surface, but like it wasn't necessarily like any symmetry to it. And I did look when it was going unstable, right? When there was this thing in the core that was happening and they had to fix it. And then you could see some symmetry in the instabilities. And I was just like, that's weird. Why would they put it? Maybe it's just CGI stuff, but at least, you know, it was put there. So you can see some sort of like 6-fold symmetry, I think, in the plasma shape. But overall, I would say they don't really discuss how the plasma is contained, other than that it's in a ring-like device and it's just there, right? So they don't talk about, they do talk about how it is fueled though, which is very interesting, which is that the ship actually casts out like a very large magnetic net in front of the ship, like a giant funnel, which is supposed to capture interstellar hydrogen, like ionized interstellar hydrogen, and funnel it into the ship. And then it would use that hydrogen both as the fuel for the reactor and as mass for propellant, right? So I thought that was a really cool, they actually put the effort to design how this ship would self-sustain its fuel without
That is very
having
well
to,
taught.
yeah, without
Yes.
actually having to carry all of the fuel from launch, right? And I thought that was interesting. That's usually something that's not given a lot of thought to for especially space travel using these fusion reactors. So all things considered, they don't talk about how the plasma is like, stabilized, but like the fact that they use some sort of like metal wall donut-ish container, and they've thought about how to keep the system online or continuously online, it puts it up there. I would give this one a 7, to be honest.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
what do you guys think?
For me, I will give it the same as you, but considering other things, I'm giving it a 4.
A 4. Okay,
And
so
I'll
what are these
explain
other things?
explain
I will
the other
explain
things.
why. Okay, there's a couple of details. So, like you said, it is well. When I first saw it, I thought it was a stellarator because it has this ribbon-like structure on the plasma itself. I don't necessarily remember how it looks like doing stable. Maybe it's just a stable ring. Then it's probably a tokamak. But as you said, if we consider it stellarator, then perhaps there's some funny magnet shapes outside of the vessel that's probably not shown. But either way, the way it's fueled also it's pretty compelling. However, so there's a scene where the reactor is going to overload. Again, it explodes. I don't know what the obsession of movie directors with future reactors and explosions, but the way to fix it is to vent it. Is to vent the plasma, and that is one of the gripe again of fusion reactors where I don't know if you can actually do that in a fusion reactor. The thing is, it's probably a good idea to be able to do that, right? Because then, if we're able to do that, then we don't have to care about the plasma touching the wall if it's like a disruption or something like that.
Well, that's
But,
the thing, right? They don't discuss how it's contained, right?
Exactly.
So this for me is why it's not higher than a 7. But they did consider a lot of other factors. Like I would have liked to see, there's also the fact that, you can see the plasma through like a sheet of glass.
That is
That's
my second gripe.
Yeah, that for me was kind of like, okay.
That's
That's
second
like
gripe.
that's movie magic, like.
But we have to explain. So the thing is that there's probably no way that the fusion reactor will have that large window because you have radiation heating, and that room where you look at the plasma is probably going to be quite hot.
Yeah.
We're not going to be
And very neutronic.
This will relate to another one on our list, by the way. Just keep that in mind. But that's the second gripe. The last gripe that makes it a 4 is that I think the movie director or producer never considered a plasma. Why? Because during overloading, it's orange.
Yes.
And when it's stable, it's blue.
Blue. Yeah.
It is basically a gas fire.
Yeah.
A fusion
Well,
plasma.
not even. You would expect it would be the other way. The hotter it gets, which would be unstable, that it's blue, right? But okay.
Oh, even
You never know.
No,
But-
I think
but
I think it's the other way
No.
where it's probably cool when it's unstable, but it's still hazardous.
You're getting a Marv. You're
Okay,
getting
yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But the
Okay,
fact
for-
that
for-
it's
for
orange
the
and then
viewers.
blue,
Well,
it's basically like gas fire.
let
So it's like okay.
me for the viewers. So basically, there are instabilities in tokamaks where the edge gets too cold because it's radiating too much, and then that brings about a disruption. So could be what you are seeing in the movie.
Yeah, I think it's also strange that they gave it a color, but like I thought this was just for movie magic stuff. I was willing to put that
No,
aside.
no, this is
and-
in this is
yeah.
in the criteria for.
You have impurity seeding. You have impurity seeding.
I just thought, yeah,
It will
maybe
get-
there's
it will get-
impurities in the
will get you
plasma. You
colors.
can, yeah, exactly. There's impurities in the
I
plasma.
know exactly why they call it that way, because it relates to a lot of people that, oh, it looks like a fire, but I mean then the intention is that, oh, it's a gas fire, so that's why I give it a very low score, because it is
I
not a
see.
fusion plasma, it's a gas fire, and that is what it's intended to be.
To be fair though, like you do have a good point. Like even when it was kind of like going unstable, you could see like the little like flames,
Like
but they-
smoke.
Yeah,
Also
smoke
like
and
dark
flame.
smokes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and that was just sort of like I was just like, okay, fair enough, fair enough. I was willing to put that away, but I see that it was key for your grading.
But getting back on the venting,
Yeah.
like you could imagine like the gas path that you do, massive gas path that you do to cool a normal tokamak down would be kind of like venting, I guess.
It's like
No, but
inverse
that's-
venting though.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
inverse venting.
Yeah,
The
fair
venting is the plasma. You open a hole in space and then the plasma goes there. That's the venting in the movie.
enough. Yes. No, that
Yes, yeah,
no, I can see
exactly.
it. Yes.
There has to be some kind of magnetic tunnel or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. And that's where
That's a good point.
yeah, that's for me where it was a bit strange because they didn't talk about how it was contained. So if
So
at
you-
least it was like magnetic confined, you could conceive a way that they just changed the magnetic field to
Yeah.
launch it out, right?
You open the magnetic field lines and you launch everything outside the tokamak once you have a that's possible. That's an idea.
Right. So I mean the venting part for me is not so weird. And actually it would be good because you don't even have to restore your vacuum because space is a vacuum. So
That's true.
right?
Then you wonder how it's vented in the first place, because it is also vacuum within the chamber or close to vacuum.
Yeah, but I mean, it's probably still denser in the chamber than the outer space, right?
That is
so
true.
it would
Would be-
naturally go out, I think. So I don't have an issue with venting so much. Like the physics of it, the reality of if you could vent at all, that's something we could discuss, but like that might be too detailed for our discussion. Either way, so Michele, did you give it a rating?
My rating for this one, it was a 5.
A 5.
I was
okay.
not convinced, but
So I was a lot more
okay.
lenient on this.
Do you
one.
revise
After-
your score after
After
our
this
arguments?
discussion, I could give it a 6.
I could
increase it even,
also
okay.
I could also go down to a 6, to be honest. I could also go down to a 6 for this because of the fact that the impurities and the instabilities were, yeah, maybe not accurately portrayed.
The main problem, from what I understood, is the fact that it really seems like it's flames instead
Yes,
of plasma.
that is my
So
that is
that's
my
the
main gripe
CGI.
that makes it a
the-
4.
Apart from the
Yes.
CGI, like imagine a different CGI, that will work fairly well.
If they color it purple, then it's perfect. I'll give it an 8.
Or if they even made it
somehow-
invisible, like
Yeah.
actually just
Yes.
sort of like
Just any other color, not red when it's gold and then blue and it's like okay, like it's a stove basically,
But a 5.
Fair enough,
I give
fair
it.
enough.
I give it a 6. I wouldn't.
okay.
It doesn't disturb me. The CGI doesn't disturb me too much.
Yeah. Okay. So then let's I guess let's move to the next one. Ray, it's you again.
Yes. So there is also a very recent, well, I don't know if it's recent, but the movie show is recent. It's called The Expanse. It's again a sci-fi space movie. Basically, the humanity has colonized the solar system, and the way to do that is that they use this very compelling and almost realistic spaceships that runs on fusion power. And one of the main concept of the fusion power is inertial confined fusion. And the way it depicted in the movie is also based on a book by James A. Corey. And the way it's depicted, it seems like a very conventional inertial confined fusion. So inertial confined fusion, or ICF, the idea is that basically you shoot lasers from all direction evenly into a single point at the center, and in the center you put your fuel in there. And the movie basically drops like this ball, these fuel pellets, and when it reaches the center, the laser goes on, and then the fuel basically ablates, and it becomes the plasma, and then fusion happens, and then the next fuel drops, and that's how the power cycle happened. And they use this to power the spacecraft, but also use it as a propulsion system. So I don't know exactly how. In the movie, it doesn't explain it in detail how you transfer the plasma. As we know, inertial confinement fusion plasma's time scale are very short. So there has to be some way for it to go from the chamber into the nozzle of a rocket, and then it goes out. It doesn't explain it there. It's probably like minus points for them for that. But just the fact that they use a commercial concept of an inertial fusion gives it a pretty high value for me. So I'll give it a 7.
Yeah, I have to admit I haven't seen the movie. I just tried to look it up online for this, and it seems like a fairer inertial fusion reactor. That's possible. Like in a spaceship, you don't have the problem you have in a plane. It should be more stable. It's much larger. It should be fine.
So I put this at a 6. I mean, I agree with everything you said. There's also the whole venting issue here with this reactor.
That is true, yes.
Right, but okay, if I accepted venting for the one from the passengers, so I accept it here as well. But I think more or less, I think this one there is some I don't know if it's fan made or if it's actual like canon lore, but I think somewhere it said that the fusion reaction they use is deuterium helium-3.
Oh,
Okay.
electronic.
Yeah, aneutronic. So it does make it, more reasonable to put on a spaceship. You don't need all that like neutron shielding.
Yeah.
They even go into a bit of specs on like how much power it produces and blah blah blah. But I don't think that I want to get into that because I wouldn't know how much power. It depends on the size, right?
And it makes sense that if you want to go in aneutronic, you go for inertial fusion because you need the basically the difference is you want the tail of the distribution, so that the fastest particles to be very fast, and that might be reached with lasers better than with a conventional tokamak accelerator.
Right.
So
it's not a thermal reaction.
Yeah, it's not thermal. It's more like suprathermal.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but also considering that they already colonized the solar system, so helium-3 is probably not. There's no supply issue there.
Yeah.
Perhaps they use some kind of other more conventional place to go. I mean, in the movie they have a moon base, and we know that if we want to do deuterium helium-3, we need to mine helium-3 from the moon. So I suppose they already passed that point.
Yeah, but what for me made it hard to believe, I know it's sci-fi, but it's still hard to believe, is that these inertial reactors are quote unquote pulsed at like pretty high speeds. High for my standards for inertial. It's like 10 to 30 hertz, right? So I don't know. I have no idea how you would come up with like a pellet, I guess, or a fuel thing injection system to go that fast with lasers to go that fast.
So the commercial plans for inertial fusion reactors are a few hertz.
But there are like no existing.
No, not existing, but they're planned.
Yeah.
So it's not completely out of the possibilities.
Well, what confuses me more is like, at 30 hertz, like the blast of, when you fuse one pellet and creates like a shockwave of some sort. does that interfere with the next one entering the zone? Right?
No, I think
Once
the
you go too
timescales of
fast?
data really fast.
You think so?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Like I
So-
wouldn't know. I actually don't
okay.
know, right?
So in the movie, the pellets are it kind of shown it's pretty big. I didn't know whether it's like 10 or 30 hertz. It was never mentioned in the movie, but that was quite fast. I must admit. But I did a quick googling here.
Yeah.
The M134 minigun fires at about 2,000 to 6,000 rounds per minute. So that's about 100 hertz. 22.
No, I know it's possible to launch things at that speed. I'm just
So it is
curious
quite
if you
possible.
can. It's possible, but like with the precision, like I mean,
Yeah,
a minigun is not gonna hit like a point every single time.
It's probably just a software problem, and they have quite excellent software engineers.
Like-
Control people.
well,
The
this-
control people.
Yeah, that for me put this down at a 5. At a 5. Everything else was really good. But
Oh.
there were just a few things that I was just like, yeah. Well, I could be convinced to put it up to a 6, but that's about as high as I would go with this.
I would also put it into an 8 even.
Okay.
Either the fact that they also use it as a self-destruct mechanism, so it also explodes.
It also explodes.
Yes. So,
Everything explodes.
Everything
Yeah.
explodes. So, Michele, did you give it a rating? I don't remember.
Mine was the same as Ray.
The same
I
as Ray.
gave 7.
8. Oh, 7. Oh, 7.
7.
Okay.
Not 8. Not 8.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. I think this one, to be fair, I think this one has probably had the most amount of thought put into it. Maybe because
Yes.
it's more modern of
I think the show
show.
overall like gives a very good science consideration, even all in the space travel itself. So we haven't talked about this, about how a fusion reactor could become a propulsion system, which is kind of envisioned really even in our in the real world where we might have fusion powered vessel where the plasma itself is generated by fusion reaction. How we don't know, inertial, magnetic, whatever. But then you use a magnetic nozzle in order to propel the plasma as a propellant for the rocket. So it is quite how do you say it? Mimic what is being thought of in the real world. Let's say the only magic in that movie is how efficient it is. So the fact that you can have 1G acceleration all the time means they invent this some kind of magical super efficient drive for the for the rockets.
I mean the pellets at large, right? So that's a lot of energy.
No, but it's more not about fusion, but more about rocketry physics.
Okay.
Like,
yes.
Conservation of energy.
It's in space. The only way you can move is by throwing things on the other direction. And the fact that you can move 1G means you throw a lot in the other direction, or you throw in the other direction really fast, right? But you have a speed limit on the other side, which is C.
Yeah.
Which you will never achieve.
Well,
So you're probably going to need a lot of things. And plasma is very, it's not a dense object. It's not a very weight. It doesn't have a lot of force behind it.
However, if a neutron beam injector can accelerate stuff to 1 MeV.
No, but the thing is, you do this continuously, right? And so I don't know, a trip to Jupiter probably take like 3 days if you accelerate 1G all the time. But 3 days of expelling this amount of material. I mean, that's basically the only gripe of this, or the only magic. Let's
I'm not
say.
sure. I would like to make calculations on this.
Yeah. Well, I think it's actually interesting that you mentioned that, because like, at least I think in the Expanse universe, there is no superliminal travel, like faster than light travel.
No, that is true. Yes.
So fair enough that C is a speed limit. like consistent in this universe, but if you had faster than light travel, like why would C be why would C be a limit? Right?
Yeah, that's true. Although I don't know if you plan this, but there's also aliens later down the line, and then you delve with
And
non-physical
spoilers.
alien technologies.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But I do appreciate the amount of like consideration that went into this particular show for this
Mhm.
for the physics here. Um, but I think that we can move to the next
We
one.
can
So
move
Michele?
to another one that has a little bit less physical consideration. Also, it starts very well. So if you remember the movie is Iron Man. And if you remember the very first
Classic.
Iron Man movie, the
Classic.
very first Iron Man movie,
The iconic Iron Man movie.
yes,
Mhm.
The one who
There-
started Robert Downey Jr. career. Yes.
there is a very nice depiction of a fusion reactor. Like it's an actual tokamak. You can see the plasma going around. Is at the level of the X-jet. Then, of course, it's miniaturized a lot, and that is where my criticism would be. But the first depiction is actually really good. One thing I would mention is that, again, for movie purposes, you can see the plasma. So everything is the containment vessel is transparent,
Yeah.
as in the as in the passengers.
Yeah.
But I will say, let's imagine we can create superconductors that for some reason are transparent. Then everything is fine. Then
I think-
that could be.
I think even the big one, like the bigger one, if you look at the inside, actually they use, I think, also something from either jet
Yeah,
or some machine, right? It looks like a real.
It looks
It
like
really
a
looks
tokamak
like
with all
that,
the
yes, yes,
panels
yes.
and such. Yes, yes.
Exactly.
I
on
think
the
it's
inside.
clearly CGI, but they made a very good job about it.
Right.
And then there is the fantastic sentence. The poor scientist that is trying to explain. Yeah, but we can, the physics, we can't do it that small. We can't miniaturize it. And it's like, yes, Tony Stark was able to do it with a bunch of scraps in a cave.
The cave,
And then-
exactly.
which is by the way, a comment that I see in I would say 3/4 of the videos on YouTube about fusion. Someone comments with that line.
I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that.
It's a must. It's a must.
But that's such a meme, that statement is such a meme.
And then the poor guy is like, it goes with, "I'm sorry, sir, I'm not Tony Stark."
Yeah.
So that sentence is perfect because actually, when you realize it is impossible. No, so that's why my actual grade is 5. Even 4. I think 4.
Okay.
So miniaturize a tokamak that much that you can put it in your chest is incredibly difficult. I wouldn't even know how you would approach that. Maybe like you have to go with insane superconductors, with magnetic field of I don't know 100 Tesla,
Well,
and then
it's strange because like this is what they put in the first, I think the one he made in a cave, and the I think the few ones afterwards, like the improvements afterwards, used what is a metal called palladium as the core, right? And that reminds me of like that really old fusion thing, cold fusion.
the
basically.
cold fusion.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
fair
So
enough.
if cold fusion worked, I think you could get it that small, but I don't think they ever proved it worked,
Okay.
right? But if that's the concept they're going for, I could give it a little more credit. I have no idea.
No, but confusion.
Yeah.
Come on, confusion is a scam.
Yeah, exactly.
So I wouldn't raise my grade based on confusion.
No, exactly. So like that for me was sort of like I can see the size part if they're going for cold fusion, but then like the actual science behind it is like complete. It's actually not a scam, but the scam part is that you can get net gain out of it. Like I don't think you can get that at all. I think you do get fusion. Weirdly
No, so
enough.
there are
Yeah.
two. Wait. There are two different things here.
Yeah.
One is some technology that NASA is developing, which is basically charging a palladium thing with tritium,
Yeah.
and then or deuterium. I don't really remember. And then that is gonna give you a little bit of energy when you shoot neutrons at it. I think there was something like that. So that's a legit technology that might work. It won't produce a lot of energy in the sense that you have to load the thing first, and it's fine for like space batteries that have to last a long time. It's not an energy generation system.
No.
But then there was the old cold fusion thing.
No, the
that
old
was-
that was the old cold fusion thing. It's the same
No,
concept.
no. I think what Michele said in the first one is, I think the term is RTG. It's this decay batteries, right? Where you have a heavy isotope and then you use the decay heat as a power source for satellites and probes.
Something like that. It might be. I don't know if that's a normal nuclear battery or if it's already the new technology by NASA. But then there was this thing that you put deuterium, and
Is it the lattice fusion?
Yes, the lattice fusion, not
Right.
cold fusion, which are two different things.
No, they're two different. I don't
So
exactly.
the lattice fusion, which is the NASA one, might work. Like that
Right.
does work, even if that doesn't produce a lot of energy. The cold fusion, it was never demonstrated to work.
So what is the sorry, maybe because I thought what you described as lattice fusion was cold fusion. So maybe
No.
you should explain the other one, like the real cold fusion, so I get it right.
So the old cold fusion, they had basically palladium, I think, as a mean. They would load it, but then the fusion would happen because of the, I don't know, it was a weird explanation on the of quantum entanglement between the deuterium forced by the palladium because of reasons, and it was
Right.
basically this. They put it together. They didn't even really know
Right,
how.
right. So what
they were
what-
measuring energy, and it was basically a measurement problem. So
Yeah,
that was bullshit.
So one is using a neutron beam to get the fusion. The other one is
Basically, yes.
spontaneous.
It's spontaneous. Yes.
Okay. So no, my old version of cold fusion was correct. I just thought that the neutron beam was included. That's all. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, but like, if you include that consideration and that's what they were going for, then it could make a bit of
I
sense.
don't know if you can produce that much energy.
I don't know.
I can't see it working. I can't see it working. I want to go above a 4.
Fair enough.
I mean,
Fair,
the
no,
idea
it's
is really
fair
cool.
enough.
The idea is
Yeah.
incredibly cool. If you can
Yeah.
do that, you're gonna have a
Well,
limitless-
but then they upgraded it in the later Iron Man movies where they removed the palladium and put in the new element, whatever the heck.
yeah, fine.
Howard
I
Stark's
still
new
don't
element.
see how this works unless the new element is an incredibly powerful superconductor, and you can get
But if
incredibly
you-
good confinement. Then maybe. But still,
If you could imagine that, like the weird quantum tunneling cold fusion thing was possible, do you think you could get it down to that size?
I mean that will make as small as you want, but then it's not very efficient. So it doesn't produce a lot of energy for volume, let's say.
It's hard
Yeah,
to say
it's a-
power production when it's still not even proven.
Yeah,
It's
that's
still
true.
out there.
But even if you could, I think you have an argument that the volume is so small. Like even if it was like 1,000,000 times efficient, like how much
Yes.
could you actually get out of it?
You
right?
have to have, because I mean you have to have very high temperatures, very high density inside that thing.
Yeah.
I mean maybe if it runs at atmospheric pressure and it's fusion relevant temperatures, it could produce a lot of energy, I guess. But you need insane magnetic fields. I don't know how to produce those. If there was a way to produce, I don't know, 150 Tesla magnetic fields without, the thing exploding by insane magnetic forces, if that was possible, then I could get up to a 5.
Okay.
But I can't see how.
Okay. How about you, Ray? What do you think about this?
So I give it a 1.
A 1.
Simply because
Bottom on the bottom. Okay.
Yes, because I don't think it's a fusion reactor, to be honest. Before I listen to your cold fusion reactor, I have no idea why palladium is there.
Right.
It is the essential core of the reactor. So there's this scene where Tony Stark is in the cave and they try to make this power source, with the help of this one surgeon that puts the thing on his heart, he gathered palladium from rockets, from like his Stark Industry rockets, and they made it a ring, and then it is basically the core of the small arc reactor. And I quote, it produces 3 gigajoules per second, so like 3 gigawatts of energy. And I can't think of anything that palladium does other than it's probably not fusion, but maybe fission of some kind. So I doubt it is actually a fusion reactor. And I also got thinking that in that cave scene, he make these coils. The reactor does these coils, right?
Yeah.
That shape the ring around it, and then it's glowing blue, which we assume is a plasma. But I think that coil is actually not for the reactor. It's the electromagnet for for Tony's heart, because he needs an electromagnet in order to keep shrapnel away.
Right.
And then one other evidence that I think is not fusion is that in the second movie, Iron Man 2, he makes a new element, right?
Yeah.
To replace palladium, because palladium is poisonous apparently, and
which
this
is not,
element
by the way.
I mean, if it's close to your heart, maybe, I don't know.
You need a lot for it to be poisonous. Put it that
Apparently,
way.
it gives you like cool pains.
I think it's the 3 gigawatts going straight into your chest. That's what's poisonous.
That's more poisonous. Yes.
Well, anyway, the new element is also a heavy element. So, and fusion is of course a combination of light elements. You have to, because the energy curve stops at iron. So if it's heavier than iron, then yeah, you can't fuse for it to have energy. So I think it's not fusion at all.
No, I will fight you on this. They do say that is a miniaturized version of the tokamak they show at the beginning.
Yes.
So that seems to be fusion.
That's also the thing.
Wait. The new element is not the fuel, it's the superconductor. So that they somehow engineer a superconductor that manages
is this your thinking, or do they say it in the movie?
No, this is my thinking. But I mean, the only way that would make sense.
Okay, well, like for me, like I gave it a 3 because I knew about the cold fusion thing, and I'm like, that could be the angle they're going for, even though it doesn't really work. But like, it's at least an angle that has been considered, and it's not just like completely out of nowhere. And
I like your idea, Michele, in order to save this concept.
Yeah,
but I have to mention that
best, but still,
in the movie they actually never claim it was a fusion reactor. They just call it an arc reactor.
Yeah,
but I'll bump it to 2.
Okay.
Because of your idea.
but what I wanted to say is that they never do discuss the fuel. They never discuss the fuel, so I don't know what the fuel is, right? Like, how do you fuel such a small thing? And like,
exactly. And
are you feeling it with his blood? Like, I don't know what's the fuel.
That's why I just assumed that the palladium is the fuel, and the new element is the fuel. So I don't think it's fusion.
Okay.
But yeah. Again, also the transparent case is not really realistic, even though it's really cool. That room is probably going to be very hot. Although if it's not, then it's probably not a very good reactor, because it's basically just a very big lamp.
Neutrons.
Yeah,
it's just a very big lamp essentially.
Yep. Okay, and then I think we'll move from here to the last one of our official list, which.
Oh, I'm sorry. Before that, I also have to give credit also to Iron Man, because the fusion reactor does not explode, even though it's not a fusion reactor.
Good job.
Good job. Exactly. No, it does in the first one.
No, it doesn't explode.
He melts down.
It discharges into a column of electricity.
Yeah, it was forced.
But it doesn't explode.
It was forced.
No, great.
So, yeah,
great job.
Okay. Fair enough. And then, so let's go to the last one on our list, which is the Mr. Fusion Home Energy Reactor. This is what it's called.
Yes.
From Back to the Future. Now, or at least, yeah, it's the upgrade of the original one that the Doc Brown had to charge with lightning. So basically, this is just like a small unit that you can attach to whatever you need the power for, that is able to generate fusion power out of anything, which is very, very strange. So, like in the movie, you see Doc Brown putting in a banana peel, some beer, and then also the beer can, right? Just for fun, right? So apparently it could use anything as fuel, and it does do fusion. So this for me was sort of like, okay, that's a bit strange. Like to fuse heavy materials is gonna take a lot more power than like hydrogen fusion. So that was already like a huge strike. And
So if it's
then
heavier than iron, it's gonna require energy.
exactly, if it's heavier than iron, then it will take more energy to fuse than you'll get out of it. So like already that's a huge problem. And then on top of that is the size. It's basically like this. It can fit in a car or on a car, which is already kind of strange. So it doesn't go into anything about whether there's a plasma inside or if there is any kind of confinement. It's just basically a blender. You put in things and then it produces energy, and it doesn't discuss how or why, but it does call it fusion. So for that reason,
Mr. Fusion.
for Mr. Fusion precisely, for these reasons, I give it like a 1. This is like but the worst part is that this fusion reactor doesn't even power the car. It just powers the time warp jump.
Yes.
It still requires a gasoline engine to actually drive. So like all of these things considered, it's just like this is not even this is not even fusion. Like this is just a coffee blender. Like
Yeah, I love the movies, and they're gonna be
Yeah.
sorry about the fandom,
Yeah.
but it's one.
great movie,
Wow.
good concept, but like as a critique on the fusionness of this reactor is a 1. So what do you
Okay.
guys think?
Ray, are you also
Well,
team one?
No. So based on Aaron's points, I assume you think that the Mr. Fusion is less realistic than the arc reactor, right? Because
Yes.
you point arc reactor higher.
I
Yeah.
I
agree.
posit the other way.
Really? Okay.
I give Mr. Fusion a 3. Like
A 3,
the arc
okay.
reactor, I give it a 2. I give it a 3.
Yeah.
And why? Because okay, I coined a new term which I call reason fusion, where fusion happens because of reason. I think Michele said this word before, like, yeah, it happened because of reasons. I just say that, okay, fusion happened because of reasons. But the thing is, when you look at, so it's on the, I think on the third, the second movie is when Back to the Future 2 is when this Mr. Fusion appears. And when you look at it, you see that the dog put always either a peel of some fruit or a soda or syrup, which means it has sugar in it, which means it is carbohydrate, which means it has hydrogen in some form.
But it's
So if
more carbon than hydrogen. Like I mean,
I
like,
don't
So
care.
you think it separates the fuel to isolate the hydrogen?
No. The point is that it is possibly fusion, right? Because it has hydrogen in it. So because of reasons, you have hydrogen in the vessel, and then it produces power. Fusions happen. Contrast to the arc reactor, which uses heavy materials.
No,
which
no.
probably
It
doesn't have.
never says it doesn't use hydrogen as fusion. That's still in the realm of possibilities.
No, but I mean, it doesn't really show it anywhere. It really just
No, it
shows
doesn't.
that
It
there's a power.
doesn't say to show. That is,
No.
but it doesn't even exclude it explicitly.
Now I have a second argument. Okay, this one blows your mind too. So in the first movie, Doc said that the time capacitor, the flux capacitor, requires 1.21 gigawatts or 1.21 gigawatts, right? The arc reactor produces 3 gigawatts. So this is half of what the arc reactor can produce. So it's even more realistic, I think, than the arc reactor.
that's not
I
an argument, though.
Has-
It's still a large amount of energy produced by nonsense.
But it is still marginally more possible than the arc reactor. As I rest my case.
Okay. Okay. But like, how do you justify him throwing the can?
No,
Like the
yes,
can, which
okay,
is basically aluminum, into the
Joke
thing.
aside, I think I found it during the research of this that Mr. Fusion is actually like an actual coffee grinder or blender or something like that that the company make, and then the movie just took that and put it in the movie as a prop basically for
Yeah.
Mr. Fusion. But yeah, I mean,
But in terms of like science consideration, zero, I think.
Zero.
Zero. So that's
Zero.
why it gets the lowest score. They just put it in because it was a fancy name.
they give a lot more thought on the time stuff, on the time paradoxical stuff, but not on I mean, they put a fusion reactor in the DeLorean. Oh, come on.
Well, I mean, you can put a fusion reactor anywhere according to any of these movies. So so that's not the
true.
weird part. That's not the weird part. That's not what we're judging it on. We're judging it on the scientific basis, right?
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I can be bought to a 2 if you tell me that they do element separation, they keep the hydrogen, and then somehow they fuse
What?
it. But then, yeah, you're gonna need a lot of stuff to have the hydrogen. Well, no, not necessarily. Okay, but then is hydrogen fusion. It's not deuterium or something else fusion.
No,
So
that's true.
that is more difficult.
Mhm.
It's true.
So
it's true.
it's still below the reactor for me.
Okay. So I think this pretty much sums up our list of the 6 that we had like extensively prepared for this. So let's go through them again. I will give the score, and then we'll try to come up with like a total score for each one, like combine the 3 of us. So let's start with the first one, which was the Star Trek impulse reactor. Actually, this one's very easy. We gave it 6s across the board.
Yeah,
So I
we
think
gave
that
everyone
one is a 6. And then the next one, I think, was the X-Jet from the Days of Future Past. So Michele gave it a 7, Ray gave it an 8, and I gave it a 4. So this one we should
about
discuss.
6-ish, I suppose.
Six-ish.
Is it a
Six-ish.
7? No, not a 7. Okay, fine.
No, because I just like they didn't really go into detail. It looked
That is fair.
That's fair.
There's
It
very
looked
little
the part,
explanation.
but no explanations.
It's
right? Then the next one is the Avalon passengers. So I gave it a 6. I think Ray gave it a 4, and Michele gave it a 6.
Yes.
So what?
5-ish.
5-ish. 5-ish.
5-ish.
That's reasonable. Like
That's decent.
Fair enough.
they gave it some thought, but like they really misrepresented it. Let's put it that way.
So
I
compare.
agree.
So reviewing on this a little bit. So this means that it is less probable than Star Trek.
Yeah, see, that's what I was saying. I thought it would be at least equally
So
probable.
let's say, okay, depending on the context of the movie, right? I forget what timeline the passengers is in, but remember Star Trek also have consideration with the with replacing the reactor every 10 or whatever the material is ablated. So in terms of a science consideration, it's more, I suppose, than the passenger one.
That's true. They don't discuss it at all in the past.
They don't really discuss it in the movie itself.
Yeah,
That's true.
Though apparently the whole lore behind it was that this artificial system woke up this guy to fix the reactor because it knew it was something was going to go wrong. So like this was its backup system, that it will just wake up people to fix the problem. It wasn't like a malfunction as it was originally.
The malfunction there was like a meteor that hit the computer. So that would cause a malfunction that I stand by.
Yeah.
But regardless, I think I'm okay with giving it a lower score than the Star Trek one, like overall. Yeah.
Okay. Same.
Okay, and then we move to the Expanse one, which Ray, you gave it an 8. I gave it a 6, and Michele gave it a 7.
I
So
think
this is
it's
about a
7.
7. This is about a 7. I agree. This one should probably be up there because
This one is the most feasible one.
Yeah. And then, so I think we agree with that. A 7 is good. Then we move to the arc reactor, where Oh no, I think I don't know. I think so. I
gave it a 2.
Yeah, Ray gave it a 2. Michele gave it a
I think a
3.
3.
A
Yes,
3, and I gave it a 4. So
That's
this
a
is a
3.
It's a
3.
3.
This
It's
is
a
a
3 for
3.
you.
Okay, which is fair. You know, it wasn't
It's
the
fair.
best. It wasn't the best. It wasn't the best. It was like the one that really captured the heart of the people. I think of like people watching. It was like, oh,
Yeah,
fusion
yeah, yeah.
energy kind of thing. But as a realistic depiction, probably
It
not
looks
the
cool.
greatest.
It looks cool.
It looks.
And it
like,
would be
I
nice
think-
if it was possible.
The thing is also, it's one of the things where they showed how it is made from scratch, right? Because that's how Iron Man is like.
Too much
Yeah.
detail
working.
this time.
Too much detail giving
with
it away.
scraps in a cave.
Scraps in a cave.
Okay. So, but I think it's not that high score. I agree with this.
It's not probable, but it's cool.
Yeah.
I'll give it that.
And then the Mr. Fusion home energy reactor from Back to the Future. So who is it? Ray gives it a 3, Michele gives it a 2, and I gave
No,
it a 1.
I give it a 1.
Oh, you gave it a 1. Oh, I thought you.
But
put a 2.
okay, no, I was sold by Ray's idea of fuel separation. Fair enough. I give it a 2.
Okay, but this
It is
still
an
puts it
average
at a 2.
It still puts it at 2.
It still puts it as an average of a 2. So okay, you know, I would have been more. I wanted this to get an average of 1. I didn't like it at all, but fine, 2 has some merit, I guess.
Even though my initial argument says that it's more probable than the arc reactor, it is
Yeah.
not cooler. So I agree with this placement. Yes.
Okay. So, though in terms of time, I think we should really be wrapping up our session now. We did have a few honorable mentions. I don't know if maybe Ray, you want to just go through them slowly, or do you? I think you can go through some of them. Briefly.
There's a fusion reactor in the Dark Knight Rises, so a Batman movie by Christopher Nolan, the last series of the trilogy. But it's hard to see it as a fusion reactor, even though it's repeatedly said multiple times in the movie that it is a fusion reactor, because it turns into a bomb in the end. And the way that it turned into a bomb is that some scientists who managed to weaponize fusion, weaponize the reactor, but the villain basically pops it out of the main system or the coolant, and it decays like in a period of 5 months before it explodes. So it's more or less kind of depict like a fission, more like a fission bomb or a fission reactor rather than a fusion reactor.
Yeah, that one was a bit nonsense to me.
I mean, you could make a hydrogen bomb, but that would be much easier than going through all that shit.
kind of misses the point of a fusion reactor, I'd say.
Yeah, it's definitely not a reactor, though they do say fusion, I think, somewhere in there. I think that's just like a really bad representation overall. Then, speaking of bad representations, there's also the one from Spider-Man 2, right? The one from
One of the
Doc
best.
Ock.
Yeah.
The
Dr.
power of the
Octopus.
sun in the palm of my hand.
So that one, it was just like basically a CGI sun in an open room, like with people
Amazing.
standing around, right? Like at least Doc Ock had this protection arms thing so that he could be close to it, but everyone else was just standing in the room. Right?
It gets a 0.
Yeah, this is like not even. Yeah, that's not even a good representation at all. And
No,
then there
but
was-
I'll give it multiple points because it's more or less they do the homework that fusion is happening in the sun, so they try to replicate the sun. Sure. 2, it's not small. Okay, it's quite big. I would say.
I mean, it's not bigger than.
It's not as
any of the
small as
other
an arc
examples.
reactor or a
Yeah,
Mr.
fair enough.
Fusion. So that's
Okay.
bonus.
Okay.
And 3, it doesn't explode. It's just fizzles out in the ocean. I think at the end of the movie.
But it would have exploded
Yeah,
if you
it
didn't throw
goes
it in
under
the
control.
ocean.
Oh, isn't it
under
that
control.
it will like swallow
our-
everything? I think that's like the what the point was or something like that.
Yeah, basically they couldn't contain the sun, so it would.
So it's
like,
gonna grow
Yes,
or something,
yes.
and then
yeah, so it does explode, but just
yeah.
not in the same.
But
way.
again, of course, movie logic. It's hot. Put it in the water, and then it's yes.
But it does use tritium. They do mention tritium, so
Oh,
that's,
yeah,
that's
right.
a good one.
Another point.
Maybe it gets a 1.
It plays above the arc reactor and the Mr. Fusion.
Yeah, but then
No,
no,
no.
no.
The sun,
But then,
come on.
like even they mentioned tritium, but then the tritium is like a solid ball. Like hydrogen should be a gas, right? So like how do
if you-
you
I mean,
it's
if
like you can
it's-
solidify it, but then can you hold what is solidified? Like I don't think so.
you can, yeah, it can
I
be
mean,
frozen.
Doc
It
Ock
just
has
needs to be
octopus hands, so he could like use his hands.
his hands are apparently very good insulators and can maintain a sun or something at 3 Kelvin. Everything is fine.
And then there was, I think, one more that we floated around, but we decided to chop off.
It
the
was
list,
Star
right?
Wars.
Yes. Do you want to say a few words on that, Michele?
Well, I mean, the only thing that seems like a fusion reactor in Star Wars is the generator for the Death Star. And I think is the one that they actually destroy in the movie, that, the final scene when they go down.
The torpedo goes in.
And
yeah.
the depiction of that might be something similar to an inertial fusion generator. But it is quite weird. And also in doing the research for this in the wiki, it says that it can fuse things, but also do use antimatter or use chemical things as energy. It can basically do everything. So I mean, maybe it gets a 2, something like that.
Yeah, I think there was maybe some thought put into the science behind it, but
Yeah.
there's actually not that much information out there. I couldn't find that much.
At least it's very large.
Yeah, that's fair. At least it's large.
I don't think it was mentioned at all anywhere in the movie.
No, not at all. It's like
Fusion.
it's in the lore somewhere, but I think also, yeah, the hyperdrive engine is a separate thing from the fusion. So like they have more advanced energy sources in the universe. So that's why it probably got.
Hey, they have that crystal that power the lightsabers.
Oh yeah, the kyber
Yeah,
crystals.
Why
yeah,
you need
yeah.
fusion? You just use that for everything.
Yeah, you can
Exactly.
use the force.
Exactly.
You can use lightsabers to solve all your problems, of course.
Yes. Okay. And
You spin around.
Yes, exactly. I am the Senate. Okay, all right. Before we get, this is gonna devolve into silliness. So, like, let's end it off here. Do you guys have any final words just over this whole thing? How do you think it went? What do you have to say? Some final words on it.
I had fun. This was nice.
Yeah, it's very fun. But as we all learned that most of these movies have explosion in their fusion reactors, which we must say to the viewers that real fusion reactors doesn't really explode. There's very little fuel in the reaction chamber all the time, so it's very hard to have like whatever the movie is depicted. Basically.
So if you're a movie director, please don't make your fusion reactor explode.
Please don't explode. That's not how it works.
For all the movie directors that are watching us.
All right then. And so with that, let's end it off. Thank you, both you, Ray and Michele, for joining us on this episode. And for all you viewers for listening in, I hope you had as much fun as we did. And we'll see you next time on the next episode of Coffee Breakdown. Bye.
Bye.